are getting a little bit ugly out there. Give them all a cookie and make them settle down.
Well, the trade deadline has come and gone, and I am whelmed.
I was, as the news was rolling in for like the past, it seems like 100 years, but in all honesty, like 4 days, since probably the moment we stopped recording our last episode, the news has been rolling in. I was waiting for that one thing for us either to be like screaming in joy or screaming in anger about, and the whole thing has just been is what it is. There's been a lot of news, a lot of like crazy, important, substantial stuff has happened.
Just not necessarily with the Red Wings.
Yeah, like from the Red Wings perspective, it's just kind of like, yeah.
It was one of the very, very rare instances on this podcast where I've predicted something and got it exactly right. Who's going to be traded? Jensen and Nyquist, and that's it.
I said just one of them, and I said just Jensen, didn't I?
I think so.
Yeah. Damn. This was this rare instance where we gave the prediction of, we were a little off in the return, but we'll talk about that, of like what probably would happen depending on the circumstances. And we said go up or down from here depending on how crazy the market's feeling. But we just got like straight as an arrow, run in the mill. Nope, this fits in perfectly with everything around it. There was no, this person got fleeced, or, you know, Ken Holland did this wrong, or these players got moved unexpectedly. None of that. None of that. The deadline was as expected. Doesn't mean it's not worth talking about. There's a lot to unpack here.
Outside of Detroit, there were some unexpected things.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It gets crazy once you start leaving Michigan. But we're going to start off today on today's episode with let me see here, cheesy opener, rehashed joke, do the overview. All right. Topic 1, we're going to talk about Detroit's deals, the deals and the no deals and the implications moving forward. Topic 2, this was a typo on my list. I wrote NHL Deads, but I meant to write NHL Deals. So
no, NHL Deads.
Deads.
Ryan, you had the Red Wings written as topic 1.
Oh, the Dead Wings.
Maybe, actually, kind of. They're
the deals around the league. And then we're going to come back to Detroit for topic 3, because there was actually a really poignant and candid press conference from Ken Holland and a couple other Detroit-related pieces. Some other one-offs in the quick hits before we head over to a very impromptu overtime, but everyone was, I think, on their phone ready. So like in 10 minutes, we had like 10 Patreon comments. So thank you guys for being on the ball with that. So the Red Wings started off dealing Nick Jensen on the 22nd, so 3 days ago, to Washington. And that was actually, I think this is something that I mentioned in the last podcast, where it would be a good fit for Washington because they were looking for a similar thing to what they got in Michael Kempney last year in their cup run, who is a depth defenseman who made a world of difference in a D-core that needed that stability. So the trade, as you all know, but we'll say it for the sake of saying it, was Nick Jensen in a 5th-round pick, which is actually Buffalo's to start, going to Washington. And in return, Detroit gets a 2nd-round pick in 2020 and Madison Bowie, a young defenseman from Washington's system. That was, in my mind, good trade. That was Ken Holland capitalizing on the market. The market prioritized young right-handed defensemen who could play in a depth role or possibly a little bit higher if needed. Nick Jensen was the best available option at value in that role. The whole league can't even find right-handed shooting defensemen, let alone rentals at the deadline with options that are cheap. So Washington really did well for themselves. This is the consummate win-win trade in my mind.
Yes, Washington got what they needed. They got him signed to a reasonable contract extension, 4 years, $10 million.
$2.5 million a year.
Nick Jensen got his payday.
Yep.
And Ken Holland got the 2nd-round pick he wanted. Plus, I think everybody's happy. I think everybody should be happy. This was a win-win-win all around. Coming from the Red Wings perspective, I like it because Jensen's a good defenseman, but he's not a needle mover. The Red Wings have no issues with depth, which when we get to the Nyquist trade as well, it's going to be a theme. The Red Wings are very deep on their team and in their system with guys who can play middle 6 to bottom pairing roles. Nick Jensen, as good as he's been this year, he's not a guy they need. They will find a replacement for him very quickly. Will he be as necessarily as effective in the next couple of years? No, probably not. But Detroit doesn't need whoever the replacement is to be effective in the next couple of years. Whether that's McIsaac, Lindstrom, Bowie, doesn't matter. And again, what Detroit needs is game breakers. Larkins, Jack Hugheses, Nikita Kucherovs. This is what Detroit needs. And the reason I say this...
Sorry, I'm just smiling at Jack Hugheses. That sounded like from something from Dr. Seuss. Keep going.
So Detroit needs game breakers, not depth. So a lot of people are saying, well, they're getting all these second-round picks. They don't do you any good. Well, no. Statistically speaking, these second-round picks are 50-50 to turn into an NHL player, even less likely than that to turn into an impact player. But it happens. All Detroit and what Ken Holland is trying to do right now is they want as many darts to throw at the board, hoping one of them hits the bullseye. Nikita Kucherov was a second-round pick. Braden Point was a third-round pick. You can find these guys, albeit rarely, in the second, third, and later rounds. It's just long odds. But again, if you're going to hit a home run on 1 out of every 30 throws you make in the second and third round, it helps to have 10 darts.
We're going to come back to this next point I'm going to make when we get to the Holland presser. But just very quickly, any gripe with Ken Holland at this point isn't should we rebuild or not, or is he rebuilding on the fly or rebuilding? This guy is rebuilding by the book rebuild. Some variations here and there, and sometimes he gives lip service depending on what persona or what image he's trying to play up, depending on like what's happening, markets, signings, what have yous, or if he's just fed up with reporters. But what you just said is exactly correct. Philosophically, that is the way a rebuilding team should be conducting themselves, and that is the way Ken Holland has been running this team. It is not a question whether or not he's doing that. You can have your gripes and philosophical differences, as I do personally, with some of the moves Ken Holland has made, but this isn't it. Like, Ken Holland, in acquiring these picks, has even come out and said recently, which is new for him, exactly what you've said, Brad. You need as many shots at this as you can. If you don't land Jack Hughes, statistically speaking, there probably is going to be a player as impactful as Jack Hughes in this draft, or as impactful as Jack Hughes is supposed to be in this draft, and it might not be at pick 1 and it might not be at pick 2. Why not maximize these odds? And you're right. I tweeted out when Jensen got traded, and I tweeted out something similar today about Glendening. These are good hockey players. They are effective hockey players. They are not the problem in Detroit, but they're valuable. Their value is also circumstantial. Detroit isn't in a position to maximize that value. It's the square peg in a round hole thing. It just doesn't work here. There's value to having a square peg. Trade it to a team who has a square hole, and in return get some. I got myself mixed up with my shapes. Round pegs, right? Detroit's value right now is in these dart throws. Jensen is not a needle mover. He's not a game breaker, but he's effective for a team who's looking to make a run. Washington is looking to maximize on what is already an extended window. They want to get that depth on defense. Toronto, for example, when they want, or every year they're rumored to want Glendening. They want to have that stability on the fourth line, someone who can be effective on the fourth line and give them a little bit of depth, especially on the PK and in a shutdown role. Yeah, a PK shutdown player who's really effective and beloved by fans is great if you're a Stanley Cup contender. If you're the Detroit Red Wings who's winning 20-something games a year, what's the point?
Doesn't matter. Everything Ken Holland does from this point has to be with finding a game breaker in mind. And again, I'm saying game breaker like franchise player, but hell, even if it's your number 2 center, Detroit doesn't have one of those right now. We're going to talk about Athanasiou in a bit, but for all intents and purposes, like, you look at Detroit Red Wings lineup over and over and over again, and the way the roster was constructed on Sunday in the game against San Jose was a perfect example. Their wing was loaded. They had Philip Zadina playing third line left wing, and you looked at the players on the 4 wing spots above him, and you're like, you know what? Actually, yeah, no, that's kind of where he has to fall. And Rasmussen and all that. But Franz Nielsen was still the second-line center, and Luke Glendening was the third-line center. That's the problem. Now, you can also argue, well, again, long odds, but let's narrow down the specifics of this. Let's look at the Detroit Red Wings recently. Gus Nyquist was a 4th-round pick. Tomas Tatar was the last pick of the 2nd round. Andreas Athanasiou was a 4th-round pick. Peter Mrazek was a 5th-round pick. Recent drafts, Joe Veleno, Jared McIsaac, late 1st, early 2nd-round picks. Detroit has had success finding guys that are valuable contributors to their team outside of the 1st round. So we can sit here and say, yeah, well, I would have loved a first. We would have all loved firsts for everybody, but it's not going to happen. You still need to do the trade for this reason exactly. Mm-hmm. And again, we're also ignoring the obvious here. You can take him at his word, or you can say he's lying. Ken Holland was trying to get Jensen and Nyquist under contract. They weren't signed. So they got traded. Meaning Ken Holland did not see them at a price that he felt valuable, that they were willing to accept. So he moved on and he got something for him. This is trade deadline 101. I don't think he smashed either of these trades out of the park. I think they were fair. And again, circling back specifically to the Jensen trade, the 2nd-round pick was what he wanted. Madison Bowey's a kicker. Cool. He kind of fell out of favor in Washington, wasn't getting a lot of ice time, so everybody started dumping all over Madison Bowey because he was having a negative impact year. He's 23 and 5 years younger than Nick Jensen and was a kicker in the trade. If he doesn't pan out, oh well, who cares? If he pans out to be the number 6 defenseman for the Detroit Red Wings, fantastic. That's a hell of a good kicker for a trade like this.
It means Detroit got a younger Nick Jensen and a 2nd-round pick for free. If that's what happens. And if not, they still got a chance at having a player who was replaceable to the team in the circumstance that I talked about, and that amazing giant dart that's the size of a 2nd-round pick. Madison Bowey, for a little bit of background on him, like Brad mentioned, he was born in 95. He'll turn 24 in April. Was a young guy who had some promise in Washington, but they didn't see developing at the rate that they wanted, and like Brad said, kind of fell out of favor. A lot of raw potential, a lot of promise. Played some hockey out west, where Detroit has a very strong scouting program, so they were familiar with him as a player. So this is a guy. This wasn't just something that Washington threw in and said, "All right, we'll sweeten the deal with like this guy." No, Ken Holland sought out Madison Bowey as his kicker. Wouldn't be surprised if he wanted him specifically in the package and then added the 5th to make it worth it for Washington. That 5th-round pick being Buffalo's, so it's not like Detroit lost theirs. It's not something I'm holding my breath about. If I had to predict it, I'd say Madison Bowey at best turns into the number 6-7 guy. If not, just not on the roster in a couple of years. But that's not the point.
And remember, Detroit didn't spend a draft pick on him. They didn't develop him. They have nothing holding them to this guy. So if over the course of the rest of this season and next season, Madison Bowey just completely flames out, oh well.
Yeah.
Move on. They can cut ties with him guilt-free, worry-free, without wasting a ton of development time, assets, roster spots, and a draft pick on him. They have no tie to him other than, hey, let's hope.
Grade for that trade, what would you give it?
B.
Really?
Yeah, it's a good trade. It's a good value trade. Given the lack of a rental market, I think the kicker had potential to be a little better, but whatever. I'm content. I'm whelmed.
The optimist in me, the Ken Holland apologist in me, gives that one an A-.
Yeah.
I like the fact that Nick Jensen at the beginning of the season, no one would have ever predicted him getting a 2nd-round pick, and Holland got a 2nd-round pick for him. And in 2020, Washington should be worse in 2020, so that pick is even a few spots higher theoretically.
And depending on your feelings versus Madison Bowey versus a conditional 3rd-round pick, that joke I made on the podcast with Max might have actually come to fruition. About imagine saying Nick Jensen got a better return than Gus Nyquist.
Yeah.
I prefer the conditional 3rd-round pick, truthfully, but hey, the argument can be made.
Honestly. And with that, we'll go to the huge Red Wings news that felt like a gut punch, but even though we all knew it was coming. So
we didn't know it was coming. I was leaning those last couple of days. I was leaning towards an extension was coming.
You thought so?
Well, once actual tangible numbers got leaked, I thought for sure an extension was coming.
Well, it started out with, I think it started from Helene St. James that the Nyquist camp came in with, he wanted $5.5 million a year by
Over
5 years.
Yeah.
Which was not something where if I'm the GM of the Red Wings I would ever do, but I also understand that as a starting point in a negotiation from Nyquist camp. But the immediate news coming back was Holland in the organization kind of like scoffed at it, like there's no way. Probably both price and term.
I would see them being comfortable with that price. 5.5 for Nyquist is probably the right number.
I would have felt comfortable with 5 to 5.5 by 3 years at most in my mind for that number.
4 years I could stomach. That is legitimately what I thought was going on. I would have guessed that Holland was looking for 3, Nyquist has 5. I thought they would have split the difference at like 5.25 to 5.5. That is what I was imagining happening in my mind. So when I saw the trade actually come down, I was a little surprised. Again, especially considering the context of, we have more information now, but at the time, Nyquist had an NTC. He gave in like, nah, man, give me this contract or I'm walking for nothing at the end of the year because I ain't waving to go nowhere. It didn't go down that way, but that was very much something Nyquist could have done. He's like, I want 5.5 by 5. You can have me as a player for the next 5 years, or you're getting nothing out of me.
The part that really surprised me was the fact that there was news coming back that the organization was like the way this organization leaks information is, one, they don't typically, and two, it's always very favorable towards the player. They are very careful with the way information is framed to make it always look like Detroit is a fair, good destination for free agents and players coming in, especially in dealing with administration. So when I saw, oh yeah, the organization wasn't having that, and like, look at the numbers. We just disagreed on the numbers, but by what? Like a year and $1 million? That's nothing in the first steps of a
year
negotiation.
And like 500,000.
Yeah, that deal could have gotten done if the Red Wings wanted it to. And once you saw the news that they didn't like that number or that term, you're like, I thought, oh, he's getting traded. So it was after the San Jose game, funny enough, in which we live streamed Zadina's first game, which we'll get to later. There were some jokes that, you know, he was going to go to the San Jose's locker room at intermission, the typical jokes, and San Jose was always projected to be a destination. I'm going to bed. It's been a long day. It's been a long few days of tweeting, long few days of hockey news, and I put my phone on a sleep cycle app, and it's supposed to put it on Do Not Disturb, and I'm in bed, and I see the ceiling light up, and I'm like, oh, shoot, I have to put it on Do Not Disturb. And I look, I'm like, one more notification, I'll just look at it. I look, my phone unlocks, and it's the Nyquist trade. And I'm like, at midnight, Kenny, God damn it, why? Why? I'm tired. And so I'm like, all right, let's do this thing. And it all exploded. Like, in a matter of 10 minutes, the deal like was suggested, announced, and then made official with all terms released. By like 12:30, we were already hashing out every single aspect of that deal. Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, which is literally none of you, the Red Wings traded Gustav Nyquist to the Sharks at an ungodly hour in return for a 2019 second-round pick and a 2020 conditional third-round pick. 2 conditions on it. It turns into a second-round pick in 2020 if the Sharks advance to the Cup final, or, second condition, if Nyquist re-signs with the Sharks. Both of those are probably less than likely for different reasons.
Man, I don't know. San Jose's got to be one of the favorites to come out of the West at this point.
Well, look at everything that happened today. How can you confidently put them over Winnipeg or Nashville or Vegas?
Well, here's the thing. Again, getting back to similar that we talked about Columbus, I'm not necessarily looking at Nashville or Winnipeg. I'm looking at their division right now. Calgary acquired Oscar Fantenberg today. End of list. You
guys missed out on Jimmy Howard. Keep your first round picks, whatever.
And they're going into the rest of the season with David Riddick and Mike Smith. Nashville, Vegas has been ice cold lately, but they did go out and get Mark Stone. So I think that's now San Jose and Vegas's division to lose. I don't think Vegas can catch up at this point, but once playoffs start, right? I don't hate San Jose's odds to get out of the Pacific and go to the conference final there. Man, one playoff series, anything can happen. I would argue right now San Jose is the favorite to come out of the Pacific, which means if that happens, they are one playoff series away from the finals. Again, statistically speaking, it's not likely. There's 8 teams vying for that one spot in the West, but man, if San Jose is not in your top 3 to come out of the West, You probably don't watch much hockey.
I'm not. They're one of the favorites for sure. I'm just saying it's not. It's kind of a crapshoot.
Yeah, it's 100% a crapshoot. Hockey's the flukiest sport.
For sure. Regardless, let's talk about that return. And there's going to be some more details surrounding this once we get to the rest of the NHL's trades. This return was different than what we expected after, like, say, the Brian Boyle trade, but very much in line with the rest of the league once the Zuccarello trade went out. And Zuccarello got a very similar return.
Ignoring the conditions, he got the same return.
Yeah, ignoring the conditions. The conditions are the difference in my mind, which would have made me a lot more happy with this. I was a little underwhelmed with the trade. I'm not thrilled, but like I can't be too disappointed in it as a fan because this was very much dictated by the market. Nyquist was in a class with other players who realistically it would have been more beneficial if they were moved sooner, that were more attractive. They were younger, they were more cost controlled for longer, they might have had a little bit better output, their price might have come down. In my mind, I really thought Zuccarello got traded to Dallas and then promptly injured for a conditional second and a conditional third, but both of those could become first-round picks.
But those are even less likely to hit than Detroit's condition on Nyquist.
I would be surprised if Dallas plays until the conference finals, and Zuccarello has to play in 50% of the games, and he's about to miss like 5 weeks with injury. Or the second one is if the Stars re-sign Zuccarello.
Re-sign maybe, but yeah, I don't even know if it's physically possible for him to play 50% of the games unless it's 50% of the playoff games. I didn't actually check on that stipulation to see if it was total games, regular season games, or playoff games.
Dzingel in a seventh, which is nothing, got 2 second-round picks and Anthony Duclair from Columbus. So good return in my mind for Dzingel.
Yeah, the Dzingel trade was better than the Nyquist trade. That was the one that left me a touch salty. But again, when this trade broke on Sunday night, there were 3 reactions I was seeing. People who didn't care about the return, they were just upset that Nyquist was gone, which I tried to take myself out of that camp because Gus, well, anybody who's been listening to this podcast since we started knows Nyquist has been one of my favorite players on the team since then. So it stung, but there were those people. There was the people who were like, well, yeah, that's about what reasonably we could have expected. And then there was the majority of the people who were angry. Oh, what a garbage return. I can't believe all we got was a second and a third round pick. This was the Brendan Smith trade, yada, 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 yada. It's as if, not that all of these people listen to the Winged Wheel podcast, but anybody who has been, what have we been saying for the last month at least? This market is so watered down with the sheer volume of forwards available that even though Gustav Nyquist is easily worth a first-round pick, it doesn't mean he's getting a first-round pick because any team has their choices of options. How many wingers were traded today? Mark Stone, Wayne Simmons, Gus Nyquist, Matt Zuccarello got traded yesterday.
Cliff Poo. I actually don't know what position he plays.
Ryan Dzingel. Like, there was tons. And none of them, not one first-round pick exchanged hands for a winger. Not one. The only first-round picks that got exchanged were for a defenseman, Jake Muzzin, a center, Matt Duchene, and another center, Kevin Hayes.
It's worth noting
that was it.
And Brad, like we're getting into technicalities. Yeah, Stone's return was,
he got a huge prospect. Eric Brandstrom is an absolute stud, but
who's better than a first-round pick at this point.
Yeah, but that being said, it's insane that a guy of Mark Stone's caliber with extension couldn't get a first-round pick on top of that.
Yeah,
which we'll get into that later.
Yeah, that one, that's a funny one because
we'll get to that one.
So the Nyquist trade, when it happened, I saw it. I was pretty disappointed at first, and then I realized, all right, you got to figure out a few things. Saturated market. We don't know what's happening with his no trade clause,
which it has since come out in Ken Holland's presser that Gus only vetoed one, said no to. They asked for his no trade list, and he put one team on it.
That's otherwise known as the Ottawa Senators list.
I would pay money to see who that team is. I would guess Ottawa, but I would pay money to see who that team was.
I would bet all of the money I have, which is not a lot, but it was Ottawa.
But again, Nyquist only gave them one team why would he give them a team that wouldn't be in the market for a rental? You don't like.
Well, you never know.
You never know. Yeah, that's fair.
So the saturated market, the no trade clause at the time, and the fact that they were presumably far apart on contract talks. Those are a few things that come into play. So in my mind, am I thrilled with this trade? No. Is it standard? And did it almost have to happen? Yeah. My grade, B-. Couldn't do much better. Maybe even a B, depending on how forgiving I want to be. Couldn't do much better given the players that moved around him. So, yeah, it sucks, but in terms of value that you lost, but that's just the reality of dealing with the situation that you have. The real gut punch for me is like the analysis, the objectivity all swept away, and I, as a Red Wings fan, was like heartbroken. We love Gus, and this was, I almost hesitate to say the first real window, but the most impactful view into the pains of a rebuild. It's not fun. It's not fun as a fan. It's not fun as a player. Gus, by all rights, should have been with the Red Wings his whole career on a competitive team competing for cups. Obviously, you would want that for every player you like, but if you had to pick a few guys on the team, he's one of them that deserved that. And you know if he had a choice, he'd want to stay with Detroit. He was beloved by fans. It doesn't matter what you thought about him. I have hardly seen a negative word about Gus Nyquist, and that isn't, a mistake or by chance. Like, that guy's a Red Wing through and through, and he's done so much for this team, and it's just, this one hurt. This one hurt a lot.
Here's one thing we haven't mentioned about this trade. If I'm going to take the optimistic view of this.
I hope we're going to say the same thing here.
He's still a UFA July 1.
No, that's not what I was going to say.
So if he doesn't get a better offer elsewhere and he wants to come back to his 5.5 at 3 or 4 years, Detroit can still be the team that gives it to him. I wouldn't, depending, but I'm just saying, for any of you who are heartbroken he's gone, there's nothing that says he can't come back. I would not bet on it.
It rarely happens this way. It really rarely does. And he's going to a cup contending team. So typically when players go from bad teams to cup contenders, they like their new situation enough to stay.
And in California weather.
Yes. What I was going to say is now I have an excuse to buy those stealth black Sharks third jerseys.
Oh,
that was one of the first happy thoughts that came to my head in this trade.
If I had enough money to burn on that, I would already own a Carlson.
Well, so the thing is, the Sharks have a lot of cap questions this offseason, especially with Carlson, because that extension has not been signed yet, and it might not be signed. Carlson might play the market as a UFA, so they won't know about keeping Nyquist until they know about Carlson for sure.
Yeah, 100%.
The rest of those were the only two Red Wings traded. Now
I don't get to give a grade on the Nyquist trade.
Oh yeah, give your grade.
It's a B.
Yeah,
market value. Kenny basically nailed market value on both players based on what the market dictated. Now that being said, if I had to give Kenny's overall trade deadline a grade in his last 2 weeks, I give it a B+.
That's fair.
Because I've been saying for a while, the direction of this team, I think what happens at this trade deadline is going to determine a lot of things, and as to where we can objectively determine what Kenny's mindset is. Nick Jensen signed a very reasonable contract extension with Washington, so we know the numbers he wants. Helene St. James is probably more inside the Red Wings front office than anybody else, and she tweeted numbers about what Gus was asking. Again, a little on the long side, but very reasonable. Kenny said no to both. Kenny just said, nope, I'm going to trade you instead. So he was still looking for the not to get older, not to hand out too long bad contracts to old, I'm not going to say mediocre players, but like not superstars, right? And he openly admitted that he was ready to trade Cronwall if the right offer came along. He's ready to. Sounded like he was more than ready to trade Jimmy Howard, but openly admitted that there wasn't a market for him, like at all. So it appears as though his mindset is very much in the right place, which is a positive. Objectively, did he make all the right decisions? Yeah, if he was looking for a second for Luke Glendening, he didn't get it. He didn't trade him. We know this now. Maybe he got a third offer, and if he didn't pull the trigger on that, I'd be a little disappointed. But hey, his mindset is in the right place, and that was my biggest concern.
That's something where we've kind of been like reading between the lines lately. That mindset.
Okay, actual news while we're recording.
What's that?
Eric Stahl signs a 2-year extension with the Wild.
Oh, nice. That Holland, he's been saying a lot of things like, oh, yeah, we could keep these guys. And we've been kind of reading between the lines on this podcast saying, yeah, this sounds like something you say to drive the price up or to guarantee a sale. And it was nice to see that come through. For me, this isn't a revolutionary thing that kind of like fixes all the mistakes in my mind that Ken Holland has made. But you're exactly right. This is where he should be. And it's so relieving to hear him say that. Run of the mill is pretty much the gold standard and what we could have expected considering some of the decisions that have been made in the past. So to see him not hand out other long contracts in very tempting ways, in ways where even people in full support of a complete teardown and rebuild might have been giving out these contracts. To see him have that calm and composure and not hand out those contracts riddled with no move clauses this time, that took a lot of fortitude and that took a lot of departure from his typical tactics as a general manager. So I do applaud Ken Holland for that. I give him credit for it.
Yeah, that was very eye-opening and the exact opposite. Because I thought, I'm like, Nick Jensen's in a position of strength here. He could easily ask for like 3.5 over 5 years.
For sure.
He signs 2.5 over 4, and I'm like, wow, that was expensive for Kenny. That's a whole new Kenny Holland.
Now, here's the thing. I'm going to qualify these next points with, I'm not angry that these trades didn't happen. I repeat, I am not angry that these trades didn't happen. I value stocking picks. I am not going to lose sleep over a 5th or a 6th or a 4th and a 7th. That is at the end of the day, you cannot be getting angry over these little things. But I'm going to talk about a few things. After the Nyquist trade happened, we figured Detroit was done because there's not really a market for Howard. Some tweets came out saying that teams were asking about 3 players: Vanek, Glendening, Howard. Howard very lightly.
Apparently Cronwall.
And Cronwall. Howard very lightly. That's the only other player that Ken Holland has said he wanted to move for the right price, but the other 3 were a surprise. Kind of. Cronwall's a weird one, where I think he's just existing on name value. Columbus wanted Cronwall, and actually only moved on to Adam McQuaid, who they traded for a 4th and a 7th, which I imagine the price would have been similar for Detroit, after Detroit said, no, Cronwall doesn't want to be traded. So Cronwall didn't want to be traded, invoked his no trade or whatever, and they respected that legacy. In my mind, the right move. We've said through and through, Nick Cronwall deserves to retire a Red Wing. This return is like whatever in the end. Let the guy retire a Red Wing. This is his last year. Like, that's it. Thomas Vanek. Boston apparently inquired about Thomas Vanek, and Thomas Vanek.
Yeah, apparently they must have been very close to actually having a deal because they
asked.
Apparently Vanek was approached about waiving his NTC for Boston, and he said no, which is his right. And I can't imagine anything coming back for Vanek would have been any greater than a 5th round pick.
No,
so,
which is why I gave that qualifier before.
So whatever. I take that as a promising sign because it means Kenny was still looking, even though he knew it might not happen. Or probably wouldn't happen. He still got proactive about it and said, you know what, let me ask him.
Right. And that is, I was so surprised. I was shocked. I was impressed that he even, like, the fact that he even spoke to Cronwall about it means that he's doing all the right things as a general manager. We'll talk more about that later.
Yeah, because I'm going to have a massive criticism coming up later in the episode.
Yeah. But here's the thing. These no trade clauses. Again, I'm not concerned about the 4th or the 5th or the 7th round pick that Detroit missed out on. But is this not, in general, a big glowing neon sign saying stop handing out no trade, no move clauses?
To be fair, outside of Vanek, I don't think it's been a while since he's
right, but it's been a while because he signs a lot of deals for 5-6 years or whatever the hell it is, right? So. Like, it's not these situations. The Vanek one is he wouldn't have come here on a 1-year deal. I argued that he shouldn't have been signed in the first place, but I digress. It's, again, nothing to lose sleep over, but just I'm speaking about the overarching habit. I hope this is something Ken Holland can learn from and say, in a different world, I would have had more flexibility than this and would have been able to maximize my assets and movements here. Franz Nielsen even has a modified no trade clause. Like, these...
Don't worry, Ryan. Nobody's asking for that contract.
What? Well, okay. The good Branson got traded today.
Anybody can be traded, I know. But this is Pittsburgh, the team that gave Jack Johnson 5 years. They have no clue.
Pittsburgh's exist in the league. People were asking about Nick Cronwall right now. That is insane.
That's fair. That's a good point.
We're in the weeds with this, and so it's easy for us to parse out what players' values are at any given moment. Like we know and this isn't to say we're smarter than everyone else, but as Red Wings fans, all of us here,
But we are, sorry.
all of us, even like the listeners too, will know what Nick Cronwall is worth tangentially at any given point, more so than the rest of the league would at any given point. But the fact that there's been multiple rumors like about Nick Cronwall, about Thomas Van, like these guys should not be worth anything. Goodbranson should not have been ever dealt. It just doesn't make sense, but it exists. And so you really do need to be maximizing your opportunity to get out of bad situations. Again, this isn't about Van Eyck's 1 year deal. I'm not losing sleep over that. It's not about, not trading Cronwall right now. What is a seventh round pick or a fifth and a seventh to ruin the guy's like legacy? You need some happiness, some sense of attachment, like intimacy with your team and with the fan base. I'm happy to not throw that away in Cronwall's face. But I hope he learns. Someone on Twitter was replying to Greg Krupa's tweet and said Holland has a bowl of NTCs in his office. Which is actually hysterical.
It's right next to the Werther's original.
Yeah. So we're going to come back to this.
More Red Wing stuff, not trade stuff necessarily.
Yeah. The trades in the rest of the league. So this was a pretty active deadline. This was a really fun deadline.
It wasn't, and then it was.
It wasn't, then it was. So it started off, I think we talked about the Hagelin trade on the last episode.
We got to work biggest down here, man.
You want to work biggest down?
We cannot not start with Mark Stone.
All right, let's start with Mark Stone. 15 minutes before the deadline, was it?
About, yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna give my take on it right off the top. Ottawa came out of this trade deadline, this whole year, this whole trade deadline, and this trade at a loss. Pierre Dorion did great with what he had, and I will die on that hill.
Yeah, no, I actually, it's funny. I objectively look at all three of the major trades Ottawa made in terms of assets returned, and I go, nice, well done. I think Ottawa is still the biggest losers of this trade deadline.
Absolutely.
Because they lost their they could not re-sign their three leading scorers, and all six of their leading scorers from last year are no longer on the team. There's rebuilding and there's going nuclear. This is off. We complain and whine and bitch and moan like a bunch of 2-year-olds as Red Wings fans. Could you imagine being a Senators fan right now?
I was talking to my friend. I've bit''been my friend who's a huge Ottawa fan, and I'm like actually consoling him, saying, "Don't worry, man. Melnyk will be out. You guys still somehow retain Shabbat, Kachuk.
Though
you still have Brandstrom. Like somehow they shouldn't have been in this situation. It's not like they needed to rebuild. They had what was the best defenseman, maybe still the best defenseman in the world. They have Thomas Shabbat. They had Mark Stone. They had
a very stacked prospect pool.
Yeah, they could have been constant contenders in the East. You don't tear down a team with a 24-year-old Mark Stone. Like that just doesn't happen. But because their owner has created one of the biggest hockey tragedies in recent memory, this is the circumstance. I feel so bad. I feel heartbroken for Ottawa fans. As long as Melnyk is the owner, this is going to continue. And it's to the point where TSN, a Canadian-operated news broadcasting company, sports broadcasting company, openly on national television with millions and millions of viewers are calling it out for what it is. And kudos to them, by the way. They put on a great show today. They were calling it out for what it is. And they said Melnyk is like all this talk about spending the cap. And like no one believes you, Melnyk. And I was like, I'm so impressed because this is like no one does believe him. He's ruined the Ottawa Senators. It's it. Like the fact that Pierre Dorion had to make these trades there is no word in the dictionary to describe how ridiculous it is. Preposterous, obscene. It doesn't make sense. Eugene Melnyk is a hockey terrorist. Like,
there's the episode title.
Yeah, like, I'm sorry, but like, this should not have been happening. Pierre Dorion, I've had a lot of criticisms of him in the past, and you know what? Put this on your resume, buddy. You did a great job with a crap hand you got dealt.
So, let's dive into the trades now. So the first one was Mark Stone. Well, first one that we're going to talk about was Mark Stone to the Vegas Golden Knights for Eric Brandstrom, a 2020 second round pick.
Yeah, Dallas's
Oscar Lindbergh, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And in return, they got Mark Stone and Tobias Lindbergh.
Cool.
Yeah.
So we're talking about a rental, a pending UFA forward rental in Mark Stone. That is a fantastic return for. Eric Brandstrom is a stud. If you haven't, I saw a few people sarcastically tweeting me when I said that Ottawa lost his trade, which I'll get to why in a sec. They're like, I've never even heard of Eric Brandstrom. Eric Brandstrom looks like the second coming of Erik Karlsson right now. Undersized, highly offensive, skilled Swedish defenseman. He's like 0.75 points per game in the AHL as a teenager. Defenseman.
The way he handles and moves the puck, you would think that he's a centerman.
He's, I think, a year older than Filip Zadina, if not the same age. And he's putting up the same points this year in the AHL as Filip Zadina, roughly, as a defenseman. He real good. So you're getting a prospect like that in return for a rental. You're doing fantastic. So
they somehow Ottawa came out of this with two top pairing defensemen in Shabbat and Brandstrom.
Yeah, and the second round pick again. It's a good pick. Second round picks are very valuable. It's another dart at the board for Ottawa. Here's the thing, though. I feel like that's a good return for one playoff run of Mark Stone. Well, that's what Vegas paid for 8.5 years.
8 years. Oh, yeah.
8.5 years of Mark Stone. So that trade couldn't have been finalized. So apparently the rumor is what had happened here was Ottawa agreed to this trade, but Vegas said only if we extend him. So Pierre Dorion said, okay, talk to him. So his agent and whoever got on the phone, they hammered out a deal. They said, yep, because this contract can't actually officially be signed till Friday for some weird CBA stipulation.
I thought it was after 3 p.m.
Nope, it's March 1st.
Oh.
And they said, yep, we have a deal. We've got Stone for 8 years. Let's do this trade. So Pierre Dorion made that trade knowing that it wasn't a rental trade. I mean, oh, come on. And they got him at like a fair price, too. I thought they'd have to pay 10, 11 million. They got him at 9.5 for 8 years. And Mark Stone is a top 5 winger, top 10 at worst winger in the NHL. I understand that Brandstrom is a stud, but he's a prospect and there's no guarantees there. I would bet on this guy coming in and being a very good top 3 defenseman in the NHL, but that is not a guarantee. A second round pick has a less than 50% chance of becoming a regular NHLer. Oscar Lindbergh, I assume, was just cap implications because he's like 27 years old and not done anything in his NHL career.
Here's the thing.
How is that second not a first at the very least?
Here's the thing. Oh, I mean, I think they gave it to Detroit. Trade. No, I know that happened last year.
That was Leno.
So here's the thing. Mark Stone supposedly was offered 10.5
for 5 years.
Yeah. So they weren't. They were never going to get to the 8-year extension at value that Stone deserves.
I don't know why.
Because Eugene Melnyk.
I know why, but I don't know why. I'm going to spend to the cap in 2020. Well, there would have been 10.5 of it.
I bet that if Ottawa offered him 8 by 10, Stone would have turned it down. Because why on earth would you want to play for that organization right now? Why on earth? When he can get 9.5 by 8 years playing for a better team in the most exciting rink in hockey right now in a state that has no state income tax.
Oh, Mark Stone won this trade.
Mark Stone won this order of people who won the trade. Mark Stone, Vegas Golden Knights, Pierre Dorion, 50 blank spaces, a dog shit, 50 more blank spaces, the Ottawa Senators.
It was, again, I don't love that Dorion didn't get a higher price with the extension there because I would have said, here's the deal for him as a rental.
But he's limited.
Now go negotiate, and if he says, yes, that second's a first, buddy. Whether it's a 2020, 2021, doesn't matter.
I think he was handcuffed, man. I honestly believe he was handcuffed.
I do. I can't believe Calgary didn't match that. But,
well, that's the thing. Like, Calgary came out that Calgary was like, no, the price is too high. And you know when you see, like, the first price for players, they're like, they want Shellington and 2 first-round picks and another good prospect and a second or a third, like something ridiculous. And you're like, well, that's way too much, and that should never be paid. But that's the starting point in anytime you have an NHL superstar on the market. But then it came out that this was it, and we are like, why didn't Calgary match it for cap implications? Because I don't think Calgary has the room or the ability to pay what Mark Stone would have wanted. I don't think Mark Stone would have taken 9.5 anywhere besides no income tax state. I think he would have been asking for north of 10.
Good chance, and I'd still give it to him. But
I would. But
yeah.
if they can't, they can't, right?
No, I agree. But yeah, so Vegas comes out of this looking real good. Again, Vegas said they weren't in the market for rentals. Held true to their word. This is fantastic for them because
they kept their first-round pick and they kept Cody Glass. That is messed up. That is messed up that they were able to do that.
Depending who you talk to, though, I would say Brandstrom's a better prospect than Glass. But still, they also have a patch ready long term. They have Stastny for a couple more years. Now they're going to be a good hockey team for a long time.
The way the draft law, like, I don't think George McPhee is a perfect GM by any standard. I think he's made some errors here and there. But the fact that he was able to stack so many draft picks means he was able to overpay for Tatar, which turned into Pacioretty, which means he was able to make these kinds of deals. They are golden. I'm so sorry. It came to me. I couldn't steer away from it. It just happened. Again, Pierre Dorion did what he could. I think you can't ignore the fact that the whole league knows that Mark Stone's going to walk. Obviously, he's going to walk if they don't get traded. This went down to 15 minutes before the deadline. I think he squeezed out the most he could.
Yeah.
So
now let's move on to his next work of art over the weekend.
Yeah, so he moved. I think Duchesne is bigger than the Dzingel trade.
No. Yes, of course he is.
So Duchesne was the first player traded from Ottawa to Columbus. So it's Duchesne and Julius Bergman, who's just a minor league player.
And I think Bergman's already been flipped to someone else. I can't remember who.
In return for Vitaly Abramov, Jonathan Davidson, a conditional first in 2019 and a conditional first in 2020. So the first condition is if the 2019 pick is top 3, the Senators will receive their 2020 first instead. That's
basically Jack Hughes insurance.
Yeah, which is smart because Columbus, if by some messed up reason they miss the playoffs after loading up, they don't miss out on Hughes, Kakko, or Podkolzin. And then the second condition is if Duchesne resigns with the Blue Jackets, Ottawa will receive Columbus's 2020 first. But if the previous condition is invoked, then they'll get the 2021 pick. If Duchesne doesn't resign, no pick is exchanged. So they get 1 first-round pick. Guaranteed.
Possibly 2. I wouldn't be surprised if Duchesne extends there. That seems like a strong fit.
Duchesne is a guy who's been looking for a permanent home for a long time. Columbus seems like an organization that has a lot to lose in terms of star players. They'll be keen to lock down Duchesne, especially if Panarin walks.
Yeah. If they paid that price and they extend him, it's great. Ottawa did well on this trade. They got a guaranteed first out of it. I don't love Davidson as a prospect. Abramov's intriguing, highly skilled, but also highly inconsistent, so that he could go a lot of ways still. But either way, they got their first, and potentially a second first, which would be fantastic for them. Columbus, though.
They are going.
We're going to get to them more on the... Well, let's just get to the Dzingel trade since it's kind of one larger trade.
So the next day.
Why not just do one big, massive deal and have more fun with it?
That's why I tweeted out, get free shipping. Why don't you put it all in one order and you pay for shipping twice? But they did
Brad Duchesne got that covered.
So we'll do the trade and we'll do the even better story. So the trade was Dzingel and a 7th for Anthony Duclair and 2 second-round picks. Again, that's great value in my mind. That is fantastic. That's a great return for a player that you knew did not want to be there. The fact that you were able to get 2 second-round picks and Anthony Duclair, who has had his trouble, has really kind of dropped off in terms of he's not been playing up to expectations in his years in the NHL. But you have a player with that much potential. It never hurts to take a home run swing, especially if you get 2 seconds. I think it would have been a fine trade without Duclair.
Yeah. Well, after Tortorella's comments earlier this week, I think that was just a please take him.
Yes. So, longtime Columbus Blue Jacket for all of 18 hours, Matt Duchesne, chartered a private jet back to Ottawa to pick up his wife, his baby, his dog, and Ryan Dzingel.
And then everybody thought, that's a funny joke. And then Matt Duchene posted the pic of them all in the plane on Twitter.
The video is so funny. He's like, wife's ready, the dog's ready, Bobo, which is what they call his baby's ready. And then you look in the back, like 3 rows back, it's Dzingel, and he like leans over. He's like, hey. It was such a moment of joy.
Not because it was funny, because he was getting the hell out of Ottawa.
Yeah. I'm sure that they checked to make sure that there was no dash cam on the pilots in the pilot's cockpit.
It was before the last trade went down, but my favorite reaction to that post was someone stopped the plane. I think Mark Stone's trying to chase it down.
So Eugene Melnyk even saved money because he only had to pay for shipping once. He got a return label and then just sent it back again.
Oh,
so
man.
All in all, if you lose Stone, Dzingel, Matt Duchene all in one trade deadline, that hurts your team. Those are 3 great young players that no team should be losing all in one trade deadline. Ottawa fans, I'm so sorry. They truly are the biggest losers in this situation. Eugene Melnyk has no soul, has no feelings, so he doesn't win or lose. He just exists in spite of all of us. Winners, again, I know how backwards this is to say, Pierre Dorion. You know what he just did? He guaranteed himself a job as an NHL GM in the future when he finally gets out of this mess. He really did, because the fact that he got this return means that when Melnyk finally is given the boot or sells the team through some act of whatever deity, Ottawa has a future to build on. It shouldn't have been the case, but they have assets. They have a future foundation to try again and hopefully escape this hellhole that is their existence as a franchise right now. But let's talk about probably the biggest overarching story of the past 5 days, which is Columbus just swinging it this trade deadline.
You and Evan were against me when I said, hey, Columbus might just say screw it.
I still think I wouldn't do this, but I'm not saying I'm right.
I don't think I would either. But man, did Yarmo just undo his zippers and let his big brass balls just hang out?
Big money moves. He was like, forget it. You can walk. I don't give a shit. I'm getting this player, this player, this player. I'm unretiring Rick Nash. We're just getting 6 automatic goals a game. We have no draft picks next year. Who cares?
I don't think they have like 5 of their next 6 first and second round picks or something like that.
I think next year they literally this year they have a 4th and 2 7ths. They could draft from home.
They're just laying off their scouts at this point. We'll see in next year.
The scouts are like, all right, whatever. They honestly, what they're gonna do is have to flip Panarin, the rights to Panarin and Bobrovsky for picks.
They're just gonna get to their first pick in the draft, and now on the clock is Columbus, and Yarmo's just gonna be like sleeping at the desk. Huh? What? Columbus, you're on the clock. Shit, we had one of those.
Is that guy taken? That's
shit. Who's next on Yahoo's list?
Can we have that guy? Sir, that's Gary Bettman. He's the commissioner. Is he available?
Okay, we'll take John Thompson. Which one? Out of America?
Which one? North? All right, John Thompson. Projected to go in the 14th round. Columbus is really reaching here. No, so, okay, here's the thing. I'm an old man. I'm a grump. Sometimes I play a little bit too safe. I view in 5 years, 2 years, 1 year, whatever, this is a team without Sergei Bobrovsky and Artemi Panarin. Those are 2 superstar caliber players, or potential to be. Panarin is, Bobrovsky depending on the season he's having. There's no way, no one you could trade for possibly could recover for that. Yeah, Dzingel's great. Yeah, Duchene's great. It doesn't replace those guys. So in my mind, I really think they should have dealt those guys and try to maximize assets for them while they could. That being said, Kekalainen looked at the market. He said, I'm not going to get what I want for them. And you know what? When are we going to have a chance to be this good for 5 months ever again? In the next 5 years, he said, forget the Ryans of the world, forget the Evans. I want to swing for it. Yeah, I have to go through the absolute buzzsaw that is Tampa Bay or Toronto or Boston or whoever the hell else gets hot. And yeah, I have to come out come out of or beat whoever comes out of the West in that Thunderdome, whatever. Let's do it. Who says we can't beat? And again, I don't think they'll win. Look at their center depth. I don't think this is a squad that will win the cup. But you have to...
Matt Duchene. I mean, it ain't bad.
It's not bad, but it's not what you would write down on a piece of paper if you had to think of an average center depth to win.
At their defensive depth.
Again, I can 100% see what Jarmo's doing. I don't necessarily agree with it, but god damn it, do I respect it.
That's what I like. It's not just that he said, we're going to keep Panarin and we're going to keep Bobrovsky and we're going to hope we do well. He's like, nah, man, we're keeping him and we're going all in. We're getting Duchene and Dzingel and Adam fucking McQuaid for some damn reason. Hey, Detroit, is Cronwall still there? Oh, we got 2 goalies. How about 3? Keith Kincaid. Let's go, buddy.
Is Kincaid necessarily an improvement over Korpisalo? Who cares? We want him.
You never know. Korpisalo looks like he might get injured at some point. Oh, my God. I love it. I absolutely love it. I'm glad I'm not a Jackets fan because, Christ, I could not handle this type of pressure right now.
Oh, no. I would be horrified. But this will be the most fun 4 months you'll have as a hockey fan.
Because, like, we as Red Wings fans, I can't sit here and say, oh my God, it's so nervous when you get deep into the playoffs. Yeah, I was nervous every time Detroit went deep, but I always went, well, yeah, there's next year. Yeah. There is no next year for Columbus. This is it.
Your team changes shape next year, so you better swing and swing hard.
Oh my God, I hope whatever first round pick you gave up next year is lottery protected. Not that that will happen, but man, it might. No, their defense is too good to be that bad next year, but still.
So, fun fact, game 82 for Columbus is against the Ottawa Senators. There's a chance that Columbus needs 1 win and Ottawa knocks them out of the playoffs.
Oh my God.
And it won't happen. But can you imagine?
And here's my favorite part about Columbus going for it. They currently sit 3rd place in the Metro, okay? Islanders are first with 6 points of clearance, same games and same number of games played. We all know the Islanders are a house of cards right now. I have zero faith in them actually making a run. As great of a story as they are, I mean, they had Leo Komarov playing on the first line as recently as this week, okay? When push comes to shove in the playoffs, I don't see them beating literally anybody. I think I would bet on even Montreal ahead of them at this point. Here's the thing, though, with Columbus. They are only 1 point clear of not being in a playoff spot. And that team that is sitting outside of the playoffs, 1 point behind them, is the Pittsburgh Penguins. Because Carolina holds the 8th spot right now, and they are tied in points with Pittsburgh. So Columbus does not have any margin of error here.
Yeah, you know what? When you make the kind of moves that Kekalainen did, I don't think he gives a shit where they are. He does not give a... He walks into every meeting right now with a do-rag and a cigar in his mouth.
His confidence is so high, his dick enters the room 10 minutes before he does.
Honestly, his aura and like ego just physically pushes people out of the way in a 5-foot radius.
His ego is so good. He's Ja Rule saying this isn't fraud.
He honestly made an attempt to trade for LeBron James this deadline. He legitimately did. I have a source that told me that, and it is this dumbass bit that we're doing.
He's bringing Anthony Davis with him.
Might as well.
We need to have Allison on soon.
Oh God, yeah, we
need Allison on. I'm gonna actually DM her. Like,
yeah,
soon.
That is the most fun part about like the rational. Maybe not.
No.
Most pragmatic. Probably not. Most fun. God, yeah. This is by far the most exciting deadline in recent memory. Maybe this most exciting deadline since we started this podcast 4 years ago. I think it is.
Oh, yeah. Well, not from a Red Wings standpoint, but from an NHL standpoint, oh, God, yeah.
Some other deals that are noteworthy. Matt Zuccarello, which was the deal in my mind that defined the value for the Nyquist trade, got traded to the Stars. Some salary retained, 30% of it.
Who cares? And for the record, getting back to the Nyquist, Red Wings fans were like, oh, my God, and we retained 40%? We don't care.
Yeah,
Who
on expiring
cares?
Contracts, it literally doesn't matter.
And it's not like Detroit needed the cap space to bring in a player. Who cares? It literally did not matter.
I tweeted out that like when that part came out, like, oh man, Sharks really won this trade because cap space is important to them right now.
It's important for San Jose.
Yeah, everyone was like, this doesn't matter for Detroit. I'm like, no, I know. I'm saying it's good for the Sharks. Like this was a trade that the Sharks came out ahead in, like by their own right.
Yeah.
Zuccarello went to Dallas, and in exchange, the Rangers got a 2019 conditional second, 2020 conditional third. We talked about it. Both of those could be first-round picks.
Yeah, but the conditions are Dallas has to go to the conference finals and re-sign Zuccarello. Lofty conditions, but hey, if they're going to let you throw those conditions in them, you get them in there.
That's what I really liked about the upside in that trade, and that I wish there was a twinge more of that in the Nyquist deal, which is just the thought of maybe a first, but I understand why it didn't happen. Again, you guys who listen know me. I'll be very quick to criticize Holland. That's coming later this episode. This just is what it was, you know? The Jets... The night before were out on Stone. The Jets and the Flames essentially went out on Stone at the same time. They're like, the price is too high. We don't want to pay this for a rental. We can't be confident he'll resign. So they quickly moved over to Kevin Hayes from New York in exchange for Brendan Lemieux, 2019 conditional first, and a 2020 conditional fourth. So the conditional first is lottery protected on the off chance that Winnipeg misses the playoffs, which isn't happening.
Yeah, because here come the Avalanche or the Coyotes.
And the conditional fourth turns into a third if Winnipeg wins the cup, which is essentially like, all right, whatever.
Whatever. If you win the cup, you can have whatever. If Detroit ever wins another cup, I really don't care what we have to give up to get it.
Yeah.
I'm sure Winnipeg's in the same boat.
Florida kept moving out assets. They moved Derek Brassard in a sixth to Colorado in exchange for a third-round pick. Adam McQuaid was traded to Columbus in exchange for what they wanted Cronwall for. Calgary's only move was acquiring defensive depth by way of Oscar Fantenberg.
Yes, the team that needs goaltending and scoring depth acquired a depth defenseman. We're going to talk more about Calgary and my winners and losers of the deadline later in this episode.
The Wild made some weird moves.
Man, everyone was wondering what the surprise trade of the day was going to be of the deadline. Michael Granlund for Kevin Fiala. There you go.
I don't understand what they're doing there.
I understand perfectly what both teams are doing, but it just came out of left field. Kevin Fiala is a project, a very similar player at his point in his career as to where Michael Granlund was at the same point in his career. All the skill in the world, but it just doesn't seem to be coming together for him. But Kevin Fiala's 5 years younger than Michael Granlund? Minnesota's selling off. They don't care. They're in this for the long run now. They know they don't have a shot this year, and getting bounced in the first round doesn't appease them anymore. So, Nashville is in their window now. They get the more polished player who's going to contribute right now in Michael Granlund. So basically, they swapped very similar players, one for the now, one for the future. It actually makes a ton of sense, but Minnesota's taking a risk here because there's no guarantee Fiala turns it around or becomes his projection.
Yeah, I would have preferred to have kept Granlund or sold him for more, regardless. Another notable trade that actually people aren't really talking about was defenseman Brendan Montour from Anaheim was traded to Buffalo in exchange for Brendan Gould, is it pronounced? Gilly. And 2019 conditional first. The condition is it's either San Jose's or St. Louis's, depending on positioning. They've got some funny parameters in there. The pick will end up being somewhere between 20 and 30. Honestly, good on Anaheim because Montour has not had a good year. But credit to Montour, he has been playing hockey for Randy Carlyle for a little while.
Yeah, I think Montour is going to turn this around. I really like this trade from Buffalo's perspective. Buffalo has 3 first-round picks this year. Even though they're not a contender this year, they can afford to move one of those first-round picks. And odds are, if it's a pick 20 to 30, Montour's more likely to turn it around than one of those picks is to turn it out. We're all hyped on Joe Veleno at 30. You guys have to remember, once you get past pick 20, every statistical output shows it's a crapshoot.
Yep.
Picks 20 to 60, actually, there's very minimal difference between how often those picks turn out. So, hey, good. I understand what Anaheim was doing there. I don't necessarily love it from their standpoint, but I do really like that trade from Buffalo's standpoint. Getting even if Montour just kind of turns it around, you know you're getting a good number 5 defenseman.
Yeah, absolutely.
With offensive upside. If that's the worst case scenario for Buffalo, fantastic. I'd happily move a late first-round pick for that. And he's only, 24?
Yeah, he's young. One of the trades that came in, it was announced after the deadline, but obviously came in before 3 p.m. Eastern time. Nashville acquired Wayne Simmons in exchange for Ryan Hartman, who just last year they paid a first-round pick for, and a 2020 conditional fourth that goes to a third if Nashville wins just one round in the playoffs. Honestly, I like that deal for both teams. I think Wayne Simmons is exactly on that at that point on the regression curve where his name value is higher than his true value due to age. I have a close friend who follows the Flyers very closely, and he mentioned that Simmons is kind of horrible on 5-on-5 right now.
He is. Ryan Hartman's had more 5-on-5 points this year than Simmons.
They get a 24-year-old center and a likely third-round pick because I imagine Nashville will win one round, probably. Depending on the way the West turns out. Yeah, I know. The Central's kind of nuts.
Have you seen St. Louis lately?
And the Flyers really held out as long as they could because they wanted a crack at making the playoffs. But at this point, they did have to make the deal. And I like it from Nashville. You're trying to make... It's not about getting that game-breaking player when you're the kind of team that Nashville is. You're looking for the little difference makers in the playoffs. And Wayne Simmons has a ton of value that way. He's tough. He's talented, he's experienced, and he knows how to win. I don't see a downside for either team here.
I don't necessarily see a downside. I feel like Nashville just traded younger Wayne Simmons for Wayne Simmons, and they gave an extra fourth. I don't think there's that substantial of a difference between those players outside of, I guess you upgraded your net front on the power play.
But if that's a difference,
if that's a difference, I'm all for it.
Nashville is,
and they only give a 4th-round pick, or maybe a third, which whatever.
Yeah,
that's fine. So yeah, I don't.
When you're in the conversation
on that trade, I just think like Wayne Simmons was a bigger name going into this deadline than Nyquist, Zuccarello, and Dzingel in a lot of people's minds, and he got a far weaker return than they did.
Well, the thing is, if you're a team in the Western Conference who is a true Cup contender, because Nashville truly is, and other teams in the Western Conference just traded for or will have traded for Mark Stone and Kevin Hayes, you need to make your own moves. This was.
Yeah,
they're keeping up with the pack,
and Granlund and Simmons do help.
They do, they absolutely do, and so I get it from Nashville's standpoint. When you're good enough, when you're on the cusp, it's not about looking at a chart and seeing does this line go up or down? Are we in the black or the red? You're looking. I hate to say it, but you're looking for the intangibles just as much as you're looking for the numbers. You're looking for those little anomalies, those differences in performance over a very small sample size. Another trade that came in was announced after the deadline. Marcus Johansson from Jersey, which is another comparable for Nyquist, went to Boston in exchange for a 2nd and a 4th, right in line with what Nyquist got.
Cool.
For some reason, the Pittsburgh Penguins traded for Eric Goodbranson.
And gave up Tanner Pearson for him.
Can you imagine Goodbranson and Jack Johnson, a less formidable defensive pairing? Jim Rutherford giveth, and Jim Rutherford taketh away.
As soon as that trade went down, do you know who the loudest applause came from?
Philadelphia.
Yarmo's big brass balls just started clanging together out of pure joy. He's like, all right, boys, we're holding on to that playoff spot.
The Leafs traded away Par Lindholm for Nicholas Petan, or Petan, I can't remember.
Nick Petan?
Yeah.
Not failed, but a mediocre 4th-line center who's 26 years old in his first year in the NHL for a prospect who hasn't been able to hack it in the NHL for the last 3 to 4 years. Sure, why not?
And then there weren't too many other... Oh, the Kevin Hayes trade, of course. So Winnipeg traded... we talked about that one.
We talked about that.
Yeah, sorry. I blanked. The Michael Del Zotto got moved to St. Louis for a 6th. So,
whoop-de-doo.
Yeah, those were the big stories. That is a lot. A lot of these trades came in right at 3 p.m. The docket or the hopper, whatever single fax machine that the NHL uses, must have been jammed the hell up. But an exciting deadline. Pretty much the rich got rich. The overall theme was the rich got richer this deadline. It really is.
Which is what happens in most deadlines.
Yeah, shut up, Brad. It's been a while since I had a genuine shut up, Brad moment. All right, winners and losers of the deadline.
First winner. Vegas
Golden Knights.
You get 8.5 years of Mark Stone at a decent contract and only have to give up one premium asset and another pretty good asset. You do that 100 out of 100 times. And so not only did they set themselves up for more success this year, they set them up for success for the next 8 years.
Other winners, every single Western Conference team in Stanley Cup contention, apparently. They all got stronger.
Nope, my first losers in that category.
Who?
The Calgary Flames.
Oh, yeah, you know what? I was excluding them.
All the superpowers around you made significant strides to get better. San Jose got Nyquist, Vegas got Mark Stone, Nashville got Simmons and Granlund, Winnipeg got Kevin Hayes, and you're just sitting there holding yourself because Oscar Fantenberg was the solution. When Mike Smith implodes and you remember David Riddick's basically a rookie and James Neal is still not scoring, boy, you're going to wish you had something.
Yeah, this trade deadline will definitely be looked back on after the first 2 rounds in the playoffs because I think it will be a big difference maker. Again, there are a lot of teams in contention, and 4 out of 5 of them or 3 out of 4 of them all made big moves. They acquired huge players. Vegas, obviously, the big winner was Stone, and then Calgary got Fantenberg on defense.
And again, I'm the type, I haven't even talked about this really that much in the last few episodes, but I'm also the type of guy that I think rentals are highly overvalued.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't think they move the needle for a lot of teams. Out of everybody that was moved, the only player I think that was moved that's really going to move the needle for his team in a significant enough direction is Mark Stone. Since Panarin wasn't traded, I think Duchesne may be in Columbus, but as much as I love Gus, I don't think he's going to be what makes or breaks the Sharks. He helps.
It's not about making or breaking, though.
No, I get that, and they didn't have to give up a lot. So, but at the same time, I'm also hey, guess what, Calgary, had you ponied up for Nyquist, San Jose doesn't have him.
Yeah, that's a big thing that people don't talk about. It's, players get overvalued, but it's not so much about getting the players, stopping other teams.
It's the equivalent of a 4-point swing in the standings when you play that team directly. If you're 2 points behind them, you either tie them in the standings or now you're 4 points behind them. It's the same thing. It's if you acquire Nyquist, one of your rivals does not acquire him, and all of your rivals acquired someone except you.
No matter which way you cut it, guys, one of you is going to have to play Winnipeg. You got it. We're going to make you do it. So start getting ready, get dressed. And Treliving was like, I like the clothes I have. I'm like, no, those aren't winter clothes. You need warmer clothes. And he's like, I think this is fine. Very well might be, but still. Simultaneous winners and losers. Ottawa.
Yep.
Again, no way you lose those 3 players and come out as winners, but they somehow didn't botch any of the trades and actually came out altogether better than we expected.
Their prospect pool is now really insane, and they have a ton of picks coming up, although theirs isn't one of them.
And I'm looking down at my paper here in grade. Ooh, someone scratched it out and wrote, fuck your grade. Oh, that's Columbus. We don't give a shit about what your grade is. Sorry to the kids listening.
And now the team that's happy with their trade deadline, and we have to come in with the Pittsburgh Penguins. I'm sorry, you did not improve. Eric Goodbranson is moving the needle the other way for you.
Yeah, I'm wondering how long they'll have to deal with Rutherford because, yes, they do have 3 cups in however many years, and that'll get them bring them a long way, but this is not doing a good job of maximizing Crosby and Malkin.
What do you do if you're Mike Sullivan? Do you separate Goodbranson and Jack Johnson, meaning one of them has to play in your top 4? Or do you put them together on your bottom pairing and let chaos reign?
You drive him into the forest and you say, hey, look, a puck. And then you drive
and then
away.
There's no way Goodbranson's getting that puck.
And then he stays in the car.
Yeah,
that was an eventful deadline. We'll see how things hammer out over the next few days. But all in all, hey, from a broadcaster standpoint, we're pretty appreciative of all the content. That was actually... Thanks, guys. Thanks, NHL.
And we even glazed over some interesting trades for the sake of time.
Yeah. So after the deadline, of course, it's typical for general managers to go on the record about their strategies, the trades they made, the trades they didn't, what happened behind the scenes.
And very generic GM speak.
So Ken Holland, we already talked about what he said about the trades, really. Nyquist only said one team that he wouldn't go to, otherwise Ottawa. There wasn't really a market for Howard. he just felt he pulled the trigger when he felt the time was right, and he had the deal he wanted, which was at midnight. Thanks, Kenny.
Yeah, and based on how the Johansson and other trades broke down, the market did not go up in the last minute, so whatever. In fact, based on Simmons' return, it looked like it actually dropped a little bit.
I'm not surprised that the return came back as it did. Sure, there's a chance that he did another Tatar, but you have to understand how rare that is. Teams rarely get returns like Holland did for Tatar.
Tatar had term. People forget that.
Yeah, Tatar had term, younger by a year, I believe, and was score like they wanted a goal scorer, and that's what he does. Some things that Ken Holland said, stemming off the Cronwall conversation, because when they were asking about the potential trade for him, which isn't the issue. The issue is they asked about his retirement, and it was suggested. Ken Holland said, if Cronwall wants to come back, he can come back. I'm going to talk to him about it. That is wrong. First of all, no. Stop it. Stop this stupid mentality of letting legacy players that you're loyal to, decide their place on this team. This is not an adult men's league. This is not a poker club where it's hard to kick one guy out in favor of a different play. This is the NHL. You're trying to rebuild. There's so many different aspects. You have to consider roster space. You have to consider cap. You have to consider ice time. Cronwall, first of all, shouldn't be coming back. He should be retiring. I'm sorry, but if he wasn't going to be traded at the deadline, out of respect for him and what he's done for the team, which is the right move, the thing coming the other way has to be he can't be expecting a roster spot on this team next year. But it's also not up to him. You're the general manager. You have to remove that legacy and that respect and that loyalty you have to that player away from the situation. That's it. Cronwall cannot just decide that he wants to come back next year. Your decision with the future of this team, the Cholowskis, the Hroneks, the Hickett's, the Shulaks, and whoever else needs that roster spot, cannot be dictated by Cronwall deciding whether he wants to play for, you're telling me that this decision is going to be made Cronwall sitting in the living room with his family? And this isn't a slight on Cronwall. I can respect the guy who wanted to come back. He's done so much for this team, and if he wants to play professional hockey, yeah, obviously. But the team just made the decision to not trade him because you let the guy retire in Detroit. And Ken Holland, it shouldn't be up to... it just blows my mind that he even said that out. The same guy who said all those things that were correct that we talked about said that. And it just blew my mind.
So I'm going to put an asterisk on this. So let's look at big picture here. There's 7 defensive spots that will be available next year, okay? That's how many defensemen you carry on an NHL roster. We know, I would say right now, 5 of those have to be filled by specific players. Mike Green, Danny DeKeyser, because they have to be. You're not moving those contracts, and they're actually valuable defensemen the way they play. Dennis Cholowski, Philip Hronek, because obviously, and I'll say Madison Bowie. Loosely, you have to know what you have, right? He's not waiver. You cannot send him down. He has to go through waivers.
You're missing 2 players right now.
I'm missing a lot of players right now. I'm saying the players that have to be on this roster. Okay? Those are the 5. Everything else is subjective. For those last 2 spots, you have Daly, Eriksson, Cronwall, Hickett's, Shulak. Okay? I don't care that much who those 2 spots go to, so long as those other 5 guys are getting regular playing time. So if Cronwall wants to come back, be the 7th defenseman, play 20 games, and because of it, they buy out Eriksson and put Daly in that last spot, sure. If they bring Cronwall back, they trade Daly, buy out Eriksson, and Hickett's as a 7th defenseman, sure.
Why sure, though? Because you still have to buy out those guys. That has cap implications.
I agree. I don't love it. No, it's not ideal, but
it's not just ideal. That's bad. In my mind, that is objectively poor management. This is a team that is...
Nicholas Cronwall's bad, but Daly and Eriksson are worse.
No. This isn't about... this isn't even about hockey, because this team... This team is, of the worst in the league, spending straight to the cap. Go to capfriendly.com. Tell me the first team that comes up. It's sorted by how much of the cap they're spending. Detroit is spending to the cap. Stop making these dumb moves that continue to handcuff the team. They're still paying for Weiss's buyout.
Oh, and Willette.
what's it called? The LTIR is filled with Zetterberg and Franzen. They cannot. Why don't buy out? They shouldn't have to buy out these guys.
Oh, I know.
It's a simple move. Don't bring Cronwall back. Offer him a spot in player development, the front office. Make him the GM. I don't give a shit. Don't bring him back. And here's the thing: Eriksson and Daly, they're not going to be moved. Their contracts dictate that they'll be there. Find me a version of Jeff Blashill that's not going to play those guys.
Well, Eriksson was recently a healthy scratch.
Yeah. Again, I think there's something in the water in Detroit right now. People are acting a little funky.
I know. I saw a tweet today where they said Bowie's going to play against Montreal tomorrow, and I just responded, well, sorry, Philip, because Hronik's getting the scratch.
Here's the thing. I disagree. This is minor. I'm not going to be up in arms about this, but I actually disagree about Bowie. I think long term, it would be... I don't prioritize him over Hronik.
I don't prioritize him, but I'm also... You have him... You have to find out what you have in him.
That's what the rest of the season's for, though.
Yeah, it could be. I don't know if that's enough time for him to adapt to a new system. So to give the guy a fair shake, I think you got to give him at least the first half of next season. If it doesn't work out by the deadline, you can do whatever you need to do, right? But I think you at least need to give the guy a fair shake. I don't think he's a needle mover, but he's got the talent to be a good bottom pairing defenseman.
Now, so
he skates like the wind and he's big. He could be Nick Jensen.
We just differed on that opinion, and we can argue about Cronwall ad nauseum, and I'm sure it's going to come up in future episodes. We're not going to linger too much. I already yelled at the mic enough. Something that we're going to agree on, almost definitely, the comments about Jeff Blashill.
Fucking Christ. Sorry if the mic picked that up.
It was heavily implied.
Helene St. James just came out and said the expectation is he'll be re-signed. Or extended, whatever you want to call it.
Here's the thing.
That's bad and stupid.
Ken Holland can do all the right things and slowly get better and slowly adapt and maybe see the writing on the wall and then slowly do the things that he should have done a long time ago to save his job. But here's the reality of it. People don't change. This organization won't change until you change the people. The decision to extend Jeff Blashill would be a tacit error, would be counter to all of the actual evidence, which has been the Detroit Red Wings and the hockey they've been playing over the last 3 or 4 years. It would be a huge mistake. And this starts at the general manager. Ken Holland needs to go because Jeff Blashill also needs to go. If Ken Holland came out and said, obviously he wouldn't say it in that presser, but if he didn't say anything about extending him and then found a new coach that started running new systems and started to adapt to the team that he has, I would hear Brian Hanna, would hear the argument for keeping Ken Holland a little longer. But this is like this. That's it. That's the line in the sand for me. We're not getting a different Ken Holland. He might flex. He might bend. This guy's not breaking. He is who he is. Jeff Blashill can't come back as head coach, right?
So, I think Ken Holland's head is in the right place here. This is just a severe misjudgment of character and results. Because Holland said he likes the way the young guys have developed under Blashill.
Oh God!
And to me, that is the biggest argument against Blashill. The argument I would hear for Blashill at this point is, since January 1st, Detroit's shot share and metrics have actually improved. This team, it looks like in a lot of ways...
4 months out of a 4-year span.
I know. But it looks like you can at least see some on-ice improvements from certain players. Cholowski regressed as the season went on. Okay, so you're telling me that after he got to Jeff Blashill at the beginning of the year, he was great and then got worse? Well, only Blashill was the only guy coaching him at that time. For some reason, Filip Hronik is not a regular in this lineup, despite putting up a half a point per game in the NHL as a goddamned rookie, or close to it, which is insane as a rookie defenseman. But he's still not up there. And you can say, yeah, Larkin's better, Mantha's better, Athanasiou's better. They're getting older. Of course they're getting better.
And they've all gone through slumps.
Correlation does not equal causation. Just because their numbers have went up does not mean that is Blashill that is doing that. I still argue there is a few players on this team that, and Anthony Mantha is the biggest one for me, that with proper development coaching would be way ahead of where they're at right now.
100% agreed. 60 games into the season, we should not still be worried about what line Michael Rasmussen is on any given night. right?
No.
Like that just like plain and simple, that's the kind of crap that we're dealing with. I agree that Jeff Blashill is a smart guy. Jeff Blashill knows hockey, and Jeff Blashill did a fantastic job in Grand Rapids. For whatever reasons, he doesn't translate that into coaching the Detroit Red Wings. You're like, it's not just a simple misjudgment. When you say the single biggest major flaw in the way he's coaching is seen as a positive attribute by management, in my mind, that is more than one lapse. That is a defining characteristic that will make you make poor decisions time and time again. Like, that is just a core part. Like, if he looks at the body of work that Jeff Blashill's put forward and all these young guys, where you and I just both agreed that they're not where they should be, and he says, yeah, that's A-OK, gold star, you can come back. I'm sorry, but that's it. Like, that's just objectively wrong.
That's like standing still on the sidewalk of or on the side of the road next to a highway. You see a Chevy Cavalier just blow past at 140 kilometers an hour, and you go, wow, that car's fast. That's what Ken Holland's doing right now, because he sees Dylan Larkin and Andres and he's blowing by and putting up these points, and it's like, wow. They developed well.
Yeah.
No, that's not. No.
It's like standing in Ottawa right now and going, this is a good hockey team here. Yeah, I believe in what's happening.
They're a team.
They hardly anymore. They even lost that.
No, to me, the perfect example. I think I'm going to come off Jeff Blashill's not an NHL coach, because I think that's unfair to him. And again, I don't know what he would do with a good team, because again, there's no way around it. The Red Wings are objectively bad as a hockey team. Sunday, I think, was the shining spotlight moment of everything that's wrong with Jeff Blashill. Philip Zadina has 9 games this year. 9. That's it. No more, no less. He's getting 9. They cannot exceed that number, meaning you have to maximize every little bit of those 9 games. And in Philip Zadina's first NHL game on Sunday, he played on a line with a defensive center, Luke Glendening, and a struggling rookie, Michael Rasmussen, neither of whom are even competent playmakers at the NHL level. And Philip Zadina played, I think it was less than 30 seconds total on the power play. Not that that was all his fault, but still. Philip Zadina played 10.5 minutes total, and none of it was in what I would consider. I think he played one shift where I would say that's a good situation for him to thrive, and I think it was with 3 minutes left in a game. They threw him out there with, I want to say it was Larkin and Bertuzzi to get a shift. And I think that was the only shift he spent in the offensive zone the whole game. It's just crap like that infuriates me. And I'm not going to sit here and say if we gave Philip Zadina 16, 17 minutes that game, that he would have scored 100 goals and blew the roof off. What I'm saying is these games don't matter anymore. Playing Justin Abdelkader and Darren Helm 15 minutes doesn't matter. And actually, Glenn Denning got pulled off Zadina's line halfway through the game because can't have that offensive of a center, so they switched it to Jacob Del LaRose and then gave him even less ice time. The Detroit Red Wings went 26 minutes of that game without a shot on net, and I think Philip Zadina played 3.5 of those 26 minutes, I think was the count. It's just a misjudgment of what your job is as the Detroit Red Wings head coach right now.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's all it is. As soon as Athanasiou got some runway, he took off this year. Larkin's always had runway, but he's taken off. As soon as Mantha got up in the last 10 games on the first line with Larkin, he took off. How is he not seeing that the young guys, when they're put in a position to succeed, tend to succeed? And if you can say, oh, they're not competing hard enough versus the defensive flaw, my counter-argument is, then teach them.
Jeff Blashill always coaches every single game the same way, as if there's 30 games left in the season and Detroit's hovering anywhere from 7 to 9, or like in the playoffs or just a spot out every single game, and that's just not the case. So where I differ on Zadina is we hardly talked about this. We did a live stream for the patrons and for Zadina's first game, but hey, Zadina played his first game. Exciting. He'll have 8 more.
No, it wasn't.
No, it wasn't.
It was exciting leading up to it.
It was exciting. Yeah, the notion of it is exciting. I agree that he did not have a good situation. I think some of that is his usage, and I think some of that is the fact that he plays on a bad hockey team. Secondly, I was expecting this to be a low minutes game. There's no way they would throw him out for more than 10 minutes, honestly.
I knew it was coming.
Yeah.
It's the wrong call. He should have been, whatever the first power play unit was, he should have been on it so that you can maximize his power play opportunity. He should have been playing top six because he's not a bottom six forward. Anybody can tell you he's not a bottom six forward. He should never play a game in the NHL in a bottom six capacity. His style is not built for that. He can't do it. If the Detroit Red Wings were one of those teams that employed a third line scoring line, sure, but they don't do, not that they can do that, but they don't do that.
But Brad, he's not ready to play top six with Justin Abdelkader. He hasn't graduated there yet.
So here's the good thing that
I think Brad was actually mad at me for that one.
So here's the good thing that Ken Holland did, even if it accidentally. He got rid of one of Blashill's toys. We all love Gus Nyquist, but Gus Nyquist was a vet, so he would get a ton of ice time no matter the situation.
And he deserved it. He played
but that is a top six spot that is now opened up. And guess what? I don't know if Holland explicitly said these things to Blashill, but Blashill went on record as saying Andreas Athanasiou is now playing center for the rest of the season. And Andreas Athanasiou's line for tomorrow night in Montreal is he is going to be centering Tyler Bertuzzi and Philip Zadina.
That is literally the perfect, most exciting. If you had to pick a pure chaos excitement line, a Columbus Blue Jackets line, if you will,
that's
it.
I would like Zadina to be playing with more of a playmaker than Larkin, but if we're just going for F it, let's see what happens. This is the line. Yeah. You've got the Tyler Bertuzzi wrecking ball. You've got the highway to hell Andreas Athanasiou, and you've got the net filler and Zadina. Lego.
This is a Roman candle fight. This is throwing sparklers into a ball. Like, it is absolutely the best silver line to come out of getting rid of Nyquist.
So then what's going to be the first line, actually, now that I think about it? That's going to be Larkin.
Mantha, Helm is what was... Which I'm appreciative that's not Abdelkader.
I am, too. I was worried after that really nice assist he had yesterday that was going to happen.
That was a gorgeous pass.
No.
He had 2 points.
Helm being up there, I'm okay with that.
Helm started the year on the top line, and his numbers were fine.
He wasn't scoring, but he did the dirty work, which might save Larkin some energy. So I don't love it, but I don't hate it. But I'm ready for the chaos that second line is going to be.
Absolutely.
Wait, so are we talking about third line center Franz Nielsen now?
For the first 6 minutes of the game before he shuffles it. That's why.
yeah. Philip Zadina is going to be on a line with Michael Rasmussen and Jacob Delarose again.
Yeah.
Before the Zamboni touches the ice in the second.
We like to pretend it's not going to happen until it does. You know.
We can. Well, to be fair, remember Zadina's quote. He's going to fill Ottawa and Montreal's nets. It's Montreal tomorrow.
Oh, I can't wait.
If he scores his first NHL goal against Montreal, I'm going to have to go to the doctors because there is no chance that erection lasts for less than 4 hours.
With that, we are going to head over to overtime now, which of course is brought to you by our amazing Patreon patrons. They were treated to a live stream of Zadina's first game. They watched along with us on Sunday. This week, I believe Wednesday or Thursday will be our February's monthly Patreon exclusive episode. And as our way of saying thank you for supporting the show, their comments get read out on air, guaranteed, as our way of saying thank you. I posted this like 2 hours ago, and it already has 14 comments. Hunter Saunders says, I'm probably in the minority, but I'm pretty okay with the Gus return. Also, what are the odds we run 11 forwards and 7D to get Bowie in and avoid scratching Eriksson or Daly? I swear if we scratch Hronik. Anyways, have a good night, guys.
They've already said they're carrying 11 forwards for tomorrow. That's confirmed.
Yeah.
No recalls coming. So, okay. It's not that they can't put Witkowski in at forward there, but reading between the lines, it looks like they're going to run 11 and 7 tomorrow.
Chris Gatchell says, what's up, guys? I just want to say I called Nyquist to the Sharks. I just thought he'd be a great piece there. Sharks are scary good. Also, I saw that Holland reporting that he's thinking of extending Blash, saying he's been happy with how he develops young players. Zadina under 10 minutes on the third line. If he does get an extension, is it the end of the world?
Third line, that's generous. They played the fourth most amount of minutes, but
if he gets an extension, there's going to be a lot of, bending of reality and saying, well, if you consider this that's my line in the stand. It truly is like I know I've drawn these lines everywhere and I've stepped over them a lot, but I can't see myself getting past that one.
See, the one thing where I have hope is that the Red Wings are going to be bad again next year, but I think Holland thinks they're going to be good. So if it all goes tits up in October, maybe they'll just let him go.
Maybe. Joe Caboose 119Z Falzone says, I'm so sad about Goose. I'm good with the return, but he's the guy that changed me from a Wings fan to a diehard hockey nerd. What do you think of Lark's comments, hoping Goose comes back next season? I actually didn't see him say that. I do hope he does for the right price. And when you get a player of Goose's caliber, you do have some flexibility on what you can stomach in terms of price. So that, of course, you would want to see him back. I'm just not holding out hope because it's never really a rational thing to hold out for that. Now that Stone is off the market, damn it, GM, one of the best GM nicknames. Who else is ahead of Gus at forward for the team besides Panarin and Duchesne? I know we'll need to fill these spots with Gino, Zadina, Veleno, and our first this year, but we're really thin at forward with Gus gone.
Yeah, Detroit doesn't have a ton of depth. That's why I'm lukewarm if Gus comes back or not. They could easily find spots for everybody, but getting back to another conversation and hate beating on the same negative drum over and over again, if Detroit was a team that deployed 3 scoring lines, this would be fantastic, but since that's not the case...
Yeah.
That being said, I don't know the last time Blashill actually had 9 forwards capable of offense at the same time, so he might do it. Now that I think about it, I don't know if he legitimately could with this roster as it is. But yeah, I don't know. Next season, with that much cap space and this many UFAs coming up that are still on the roster, Vanek, Cronwall, Witkowski, etc. There is so much that could happen. I as much as I would love to speculate, it's
really that's pitch black looking at that right now.
Yeah.
Jonathan McLeish says, why were people complaining about the retained salary in the Nyquist trade? Am I missing any negative impact it has on our Wings, or is it simply that it looks bad in an overall assessment of who won the trade? No, it's not bad on the Wings. It's good on the Sharks. That's all.
Yep.
Yeah. People who are complaining don't really understand. Overall, the trades were a bit meh, but with the Nyquist no trade clause and rumors he was big on San Jose, it didn't leave Holland in the best bargaining position. At least we got a team to root for now. Yeah, that's true. Red Wings fans can root for the Sharks in the West.
I'm here for Nyquist and Karlsson and Thornton winning a cup.
I like that Nyquist went somewhere with Karlsson. I like that the Swedish Mafia sticks together. Brendan B. Singer says, on one hand, the Red Wings being a train wreck and probably extending Blashill and Cronwall sucks. On the other hand, the deadline was big and these playoffs are going to be awesome. That being said, who are your guys' post-deadline Stanley Cup final predictions? Thanks as always. Oh,
Christ.
Tampa Bay out of the East still.
Yeah, Tampa Bay, they will be my pick until further notice.
And then in the West, a 3-headed dog of Winnipeg, Nashville, and Vegas.
Oh, God, I have San Jose in there, too. And I still, even though I don't like their deadline, I still don't rule out Calgary.
I'll say Winnipeg. I'll say Winnipeg, Tampa. Same as last year, Winnipeg, Tampa Bay, because I'm a boring old man.
I really...
How do you pick against Winnipeg?
Forget Nyquist. Honestly, I have a hard time betting against San Jose's defense right now. Classic, Burns, Karlsson. My God.
Karlsson's injured right now.
Yeah, but he won't be for playoffs. They're going to rest him up as much as they need. If he is injured, then yeah, I probably default to Winnipeg then.
It's so hard because the contenders in the West, Calgary excluded, did a fantastic job of shoring up their teams. We're going to see how these next few weeks go to really make that assessment. But yeah, I'm going to stick with the boring Winnipeg Tampa prediction. Warm Chord Music says, what impact do you think giving up Nyquist and Jensen will have on the Lose for Hughes sweepstakes? Also, how unwatchable is this team going to be once Zadina goes back to Grand Rapids? Yikes. Lose for Hughes sweepstakes, it's going to help them get below the other teams that made trades, but no one's going to be worse than Ottawa, so...
Detroit was 27th in the NHL in goals against, and then they got rid of their best defensive defenseman. The Red Wings were 23rd in goals for, and then they got rid of their second leading scorer. Yeah, it's going to be rough.
Yeah, so focus on the silver linings when Zadina goes back down. Brad Spencer says, every deadline I find myself going through the timelines of beat writers for other teams. Who are some of your favorite non-Red Wings beat writers around the NHL, other than friend of the program, Allison Lucan? Oh, that's a good one. Tampa has Greg Smith is his name? Something?
For humor content, Sarah Sivian in Carolina is fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
She is on point. For just being accurate and reporting good stuff. Port's line in Columbus is good. Russo in Minnesota is good. There's a bunch, man. It's hard to think of them off the top of my head.
Leafs are filled with great writers and reporters. Let's see. Joe Smith. Sorry, not Greg Smith. Joe Smith at Tampa Bay. I really like. I think he also writes for he's also with The Athletic. Hey, he's a Michigan grad. Yeah, Joe's a great follow. There's a ton. And the times like this, the trade deadline and a draft when everyone's really active is a great way to get insight into that. Hey, if you're on Twitter, follow @WingedWheelPod. Go to the bio and follow our individual accounts. We have been on there like madmen lately.
I was kind of on there today. I had to, work like an adult today, so
I took the afternoon off.
Lottie fucking da.
Garrett TV says, at the moment, with a likely high first and 3 second-round picks, what should be the draft strategy come June? I'm assuming you've probably discussed this, but if not, curious of your thoughts as we now have 7 and possibly 8 picks in total in the first 2 rounds, combined for 2019 and 2020. I've crunched the numbers and determined that's a lot of high-value picks, even if a few are late in the second.
Okay. I'm going to preface this by saying always go best player available, and I'm also going to say, holy shit, do we need a centerman? So...
Yeah. Obviously, when you have like a top pick, you go best player available. If you're talking, you have some choices like they did it around the McIsaac range last year. You go for like if you have a Veleno opportunity again, a Bergeron opportunity, unless there is a project defenseman like Merkley available.
Okay, so take this for how it works. If we're just talking about types of players that they are stylistically. Not talking about where Detroit's going to pick versus yada, 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 although these guys are all going to be in that neighborhood. The players in the top 10 that the Red Wings need are Jack Hughes, Bowen Byram, Trevor Zegras, Alex Turcotte, Kirby Dach. They need either a top pairing two-way offensive defenseman or a playmaking center. Look at the Red Wings roster right now in terms of passers. They don't have one. they don't.
They just an applicator.
Don't have
a playmaker. See that pass?
Larkin has been doing a great job of being that playmaker, even though that's not his thing. They need a guy who that's his thing. A Nicholas Backstrom, a Patrice Bergeron, just someone who is just an elite playmaker.
Who
Detroit does
at
not
that
have
spot
one.
Will be the best player available.
Exactly. So what I'm saying is if you value, I'm just going to say Dylan Cousins and Trevor Zegras equally, you take Zegras because Cousins is a goal scorer, Zegras is a playmaker. Detroit needs the playmaker.
Andrew Schreeman says it was surprising to hear the rumors about Cronwall and Vanek. I still do not understand why Holland gave Vanek a no-trade clause in the first place. Considering we're basically going to have the exact same roster and coaching staff for next season, is it too early to start talking about top prospects for 2020?
Alexi Lafreniere, Lucas Raymond, Alexander Holtz, Quentin Byfield, Jamie Drysdale, Cole Perfetti, in that order.
Kevin Hart says, with the extra second rounders we have and the amount of draft picks used over the past last couple of years, do you see Holland possibly bundling a couple of picks and trying to move into the late first to try and get another falling prospect like a Veleno last year, or staying with the idea of more picks the better the chances of hitting and keeping the seconds?
Keeping in mind that guys like Veleno falling like that is extremely rare. Keep the picks, throw darts. Again, statistically speaking, picks 20 to 60, not a whole lot different in terms of who hits and who doesn't, because at that point you're picking guys with flaws and you're just hoping that the top end part of their game outweighs the flaw, or they can at least mask the flaw enough to become a regular. Again, like I think it was Kucherov. You go back and look at his scouting reports. There was a lot of flaws there, but the offensive upside everybody knew was there. So you just take a swing and hope the rest of his game pans out, and it did. So that's a guy like Pavel Dorofiev in this draft who's not scheduled to go until the second round. You take a flyer on a guy like that and you hope.
Jared Mello says, I read that Athanasiou continued to receive some interest today. Are there any prospects that would be reasonable to pursue with him as the main trade asset?
Yes, many. But none of them, no team would be willing to give them up.
No, not with the... Athanasiou's been great and been exploding in terms of value around the league, but I don't think teams would be willing to pay what he's worth right now.
Colorado, you need scoring depth? Yeah, sure, we could use a Cale Makar. And Colorado would be like, click.
Yeah, 100%. Jacob Lozen says, February 24th, location, LCA, 259. Doug Wilson, we want Nyquist. Best we can do is a second-round pick. Ken Holland replies, LMAO, okay, he might be worth the first tomorrow at 2 p.m., but I'll take a second-round pick if he scores. But he flies back tonight with you. 1923 into the first period, Ken Holland shouts, Ferk! And that's how it went down in my head, at least. Evan Beckner says, hey guys, I'll keep it short. I'm satisfied with Kenny's job this deadline. Looking forward to Brad's rundown of second-round prospects.
We're getting there, man. I've barely worked my way through the first round already.
Some hashtag Ask WWP questions on Twitter. Jake Nagy says, with the Wings stockpiling tons of second and thirds, could you see them? This is preparing for a blockbuster offer sheet this summer.
Nope, because you need firsts if you want a blockbuster offer sheet. And Detroit can't be giving up first. I really wish Ken Holland didn't say anything about offer sheets, because out of all the teams in the league in a position to give offer sheets, Detroit isn't one of them.
Iserbaz says, suppose we better start studying second-round picks for this draft, given all those picks. Any names to watch out for? Look out for that in the coming weeks, I'd say.
Yeah, first one that comes off the top of my head that I see in the second round of most mocks is Dorofiev. He's very highly skilled, putting up more numbers than Podkolzin in the same league, but has bigger question marks in his game. So we shall see. But yeah, what do we get? Because Washington's second was next year, right? So we have ours, the Islanders, and San Jose's seconds this year, right?
Yeah, let me look at that.
Because so we got three. This
Currently
year.
on Cliff Poo's cap-friendly page.
Okay.
This year we have our first, our second, the Islanders second, the Sharks second, and then Columbus is fifth. That's like those are the other teams.
Those are the extras. So 10 picks still, and then we've got
Washington second next year, and San Jose's maybe third next year. Which
it will be a third, or it could be a second. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we have Vegas's third the year after that.
2021, yeah.
Got it.
So there's quite a bit there. Holographic Charizard says, shy move for Gus for a second and a third when re-signing him is better. Basically asking, is re-signing him better than the second and the third that they got?
No, because they could still re-sign him in the summer.
Yeah, that's a tough, like, again, all the criticism for Ken Holland, that's not one of them.
Rebuilding team. Futures versus a 30-year-old should trump out almost every time.
Chris Nova says, can't defend the no-trade clauses and bloated contracts, but I can't be too upset that the Red Wings want to re-sign Howard. Would be nice if Howard was actually re-signed right now, though.
Yeah, I don't love the fact that they went through the deadline without an extension. I would have been angry had that happened with Nyquist or Jensen, but from everything, it sounds like the Red Wings want to keep Howard, and it sounds like Howard wants to stay. So I can't imagine that not getting done.
Yeah. We will head over to Reddit, where we have time for a few comments as I navigate over there. Should you talk about our giveaway, or we'll do that after? Yeah, we'll do that after, judging by the look on your face. Not sure you know.
Yeah, I forgot the parameters of how we were going to...
Yeah. Jacques Strapp says, I like the moves Holland made. Others may not agree, but in the long term, he's setting a team up nicely for an Yzerman takeover and a semi-clean slate. It's not perfect, but it'll work out in the end. Wish Nyquist and Jensen well. Meanwhile, Poyle in Nashville over here doing vintage Holland moves and stacking his team for a cup run while dumping picks like an Chell 19 Furquad. Don't read that if Mika's present. It'll work out in short term, but it will cause them problems in the years to come with cap issues and not many standouts in their talent pool, with the exception of Tolvanen. What can Poyle learn from Ken Holland from this strategy, or is he doing better than Kenny did? I mean, he's got a really stacked team right now. It's hard to really get mad at him for that.
Exactly.
Yeah, like, I think he's making the right moves, honestly. Like, yeah, you might deplete your pick pool and your prospect pool, but when you're this close to a cup, you throw everything in the kitchen sink of that team to make it better right now. White Snake 87 says St. James is reporting Holland is planning to extend Blashill. Thoughts? Well, you heard him. I don't believe Blashill's done anything to warrant an extension. We've seen regression in the 4 years he's been here. Rebuild or not, his personnel decisions are questionable at best, and it just seems like good timing for a coaching change rather than an extension. Happier note, Joe Veleno's currently leading the queue with 96 points in 50 games.
And he's played 4 less games than the guy he's tied for the scoring lead with.
Yeah.
Players who leave for the World Juniors never win their league scoring title. That doesn't happen because they've been gone. Joe Veleno was away from his league for over 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And he still leads the league in scoring. Not points per game. He has the total points lead now. It's insane. And you know what defenseman in the queue has the best points per game? That's right. Jared McIsaac. The Q is ours, boys.
We've won Quebec. And next, the world. With that, we're going to do our little episode wrap-up. So it's the end of the year. It's about that time again. We are going to be doing one of our major giveaways, which is 2 tickets to the Detroit Red Wings, and it's April 6th against the Buffalo Sabres. It's their last game of the season. Yep. So we're going to be giving away 2 tickets. One of them will be Patreon exclusive, and one of them will be open for everyone, patrons included. So you guys get to double dip. And your entries are automatically entered, so you don't have to worry about that. And you have a chance at bonus entries via Twitter, which is how everyone else will. So we'll tweet out this episode a couple times. You'll have the opportunity to retweet and follow, and you get bonus entries for following us, the whole bit. Again, that is the chance to win a ticket along with one other person to watch the Red Wings at Little Caesars Arena in Detroit on April 6th, face off against the Buffalo Sabres to wrap up the 2018-2019 season with the host of the Winged Wheel podcast. So you'll get to meet us. We'll hang out. And, of course, guys, we'll be doing our meetup beforehand, so keep an eye out for details on that. I'll make that Brad's job, too. We'll probably go to the same place this time. And, so more details for that to come, but keep an eye out on Twitter for that contest. On Twitter, follow at Winged Wheel Pod. Follow our individual accounts. Thank you to everyone who supports the show. Thank you to everyone who tuned in for our trade deadline coverage. This was a hell of a year. I'd like to thank our name-level sponsors, the people who make this show happen: Sean Levine, Chad Hiersack, Sky Carcass, Arjun Shankar, Clayton Van Dyken, Langabeer, Derek Shippard, Kalen Wood, Charlie Elkins, Stan Olson, Ryan Lewis, Dan Bell, Hannah Lee. Thank you guys so much. If you guys want to support the show in other ways, subscribe however you get it, like however you get wherever you're on the podcast, leave ratings wherever you can. It's huge for us. You guys have been amazing with iTunes lately. Great job on staying awake and alive on the trade deadline, and rest those thumbs.